Hey guys, big day here at the shop. I was planning to finish more of the interior build out before buying a lift, but the recent tariff situation meant that we had to act quickly or pay an extra $2,000 for this advantaged SC10 two-post lift. Say whatever you want about tariffs and buying American-made lifts, but for my budget and needs, this is the lift I wanted, so that's the one I got. It is made in China, but I've heard mostly good things from other owners, and it had a lot of the features that I wanted at a fairly low cost. It's got a 10,000 pound capacity, which is almost double my heaviest vehicle. It's a symmetrical lift, so I should be able to load cars onto it in either direction, which is cool. And it has 3-stage automatic locking front and rear arms for maximum adjustability. It also has a single-sided lock release mechanism, which a lot of the other lifts in this price point don't. And the adjustable lift pads can be set really low, which I like. Also, I paid full price for this. I'm realizing this kind of sounds like an ad, but it's not. I'm just telling you why I chose this lift. Anyway, it's just me here, so of course I came up with a brilliant plan to unload the 1,600 pound package by myself. I'm just going to lift the back end off the trailer, then drive the trailer out from underneath the lift. When it gets to the end of the trailer, I'll just lower the back end onto the ground and use the hoist to lift the front end off the trailer. So easy. Unfortunately, I failed to consider that the friction of the lift on the trailer was way more than that of the hoist wheels on the concrete. So when I tried this, I just ended up sliding the hoist around the shop and marring up my brand new floor. In the end, I just kind of scooted it a few inches at a time off the end of the trailer. If you're watching this and thinking that this guy doesn't seem qualified to install his own lift, I think you're probably right. But we're still going to try. Oh, and I also feel compelled to tell you that this cool T1 Sprinter van is not mine. A friend is borrowing shop space to do a head gasket on it, and it'll be gone soon. Really cool rig though, and now I'm at least a little van curious. Wheeling the first post into position was pretty easy with these car dollies, but I really can't believe how heavy they are. Still, I've seen videos of 2 people standing them up, so I figured that with an engine hoist I could probably do it myself no problem. So it wasn't a problem per se, but it easily could have become one. I do not recommend this. Once the post is up though, it is easy to walk it around to where it needs to be. Putting the post here should leave us with about 2 feet between the other post and the wall, and both posts will be about 12 feet away from the back wall. It's tight and it's right around the minimum manufacturer recommendations, but given the relatively small size of the shop, it'll have to work. Obviously the posts need to be plumb. The level tells us that it needs to go forward and in, so this corner anchor won't get any shims and we'll put it in first. Drilling for these anchors requires a hammer drill and a 3/4 inch bit that will reach all the way through the concrete. This area of my floor was supposed to be 6 inches thick, but it actually looks closer to 7 based on the bit depth when I hit the rock base layer. Drilling all the way through will let us pound the anchors down into the ground if we ever need to replace them for some reason. Way easier than trying to remove it or cut it. With all the holes drilled and anchors installed but not fully tightened, we can just slide the shims under the base plate. After the anchors are torqued to 100 foot-pounds, the first post is nice and plumb. So after getting that first post stood up and anchored by myself, I attempted the same move with the other one. The second post doesn't have this bracket for the power unit, which is what I lifted the first one by, so I couldn't use the engine hoist method in the same way. So I did the responsible thing and I had a friend come over and help me stand the second post up. Being able to title this video something like, "I installed a 2-post lift all by myself," might have pleased the algorithm, but the risk of bodily harm was way too real. To make sure the spacing between the posts was right, I put the top plate on before anchoring the second post. In my haste to do that, I forgot to put on the safety shutoff switch. This is just a simple circuit interrupter that will cut power to the lift motor if the roof of a car touches the top of the lift. Seems like a pretty good thing to have. When the top of the car pushes up on this padded bar, it'll contact the switch and cut power immediately. While we're up here, I'll run the hydraulic line over to the other post. There's a line that comes out of the motor, then splits at a T and runs to each of the lift cylinders in the posts. Hopefully it'll get a little tighter than this once everything's hooked up, but really it just needs to stay off the cables that will also run through here. This little line is what connects the motor and the T-fitting like this. And then we just fill it with a few gallons of hydraulic fluid, which is very straightforward. Okay, time to figure out what these cables are for. Just kidding, I kind of already know what they're for because I watched a YouTube video about them so I could make a YouTube video about them. What a time to be alive. With the carriages lifted up and resting on the first locks, we can run the cable out the bottom of the carriage, around the lower pulley, and all the way back up to the top pulley. Then it runs across the top of the lift, around another pulley at the top of the other post, and finally down into the opposite carriage. So there are two cables connecting the lift carriages together. They don't bear the full weight of a vehicle, they just keep the two lift cylinders even as they lift and lower. Since the car is never the same weight from right to left, one cylinder may want to lift faster. The motor would then pump more fluid to that faster cylinder, which has less pressure than the slower cylinder. If that continued, I suppose the lift could flip a car over on its side. So these cables are pretty cool, I guess. The goal here is to get both cables to a similar tension and make sure they're free of obstructions and shit. That's clearly not supposed to be like that. Luckily, it's a quick fix and we're done with the cables for now. I guess the last thing we need to do before we can lift up some cars is the electrical work. This is the 100 amp sub panel that's actually only running off a 60 amp circuit from my old garage. I've gotten some questions about heat and AC in the shop, and this is the main reason I don't plan on either of those things. I'm going to need every amp I can get out of this panel to go to normal shop activities. Anyway, the lift itself needs a 240 volt 20 amp circuit, which means I can use the leftover 12 gauge copper wire from all my 120 volt 20 amp circuits. And that's great news because wire is expensive. I actually have an almost finished video about all the other electrical work out here, but it kind of feels like there's enough videos of guys who are not electricians wiring outlets on YouTube. Eventually, this wall will get covered with 5/8 inch plywood like the rest of the walls. The original plan was to only do the bottom 8 feet, but I quite like the finished look, so maybe I'll go all the way up. I've also found that plywood's a nice wall covering because I can pretty much hang things wherever I want. Okay, so it's the next day. I've got my 12-2 MC power running from the box up to the eave, along the eave, over the truss, next to the lift, and then it comes down right here. And then got this power cord here. I'm waiting for a switch to show up because I don't want to just direct wire this. I want to have a way to turn it off when I'm not using it so kids don't use it or whatever. But I'm kind of thinking I'm just going to hook this up temporarily to see if everything works. So yeah, let's do that. Before we just connect this thing to 240 volts, I want to check the wiring in the box to make sure it's right. And it's a good thing we did, because right off the bat we have a broken wire. It's easily fixed by just putting a new end on it and reconnecting it, but that could have been pretty bad. With everything temporarily wired, we should be able to get the motor going. Nice. So I don't know if this is a code requirement, but not everyone puts a shutoff switch on the lift motor. It seems like a really good idea though. If the motor somehow got stuck in the on position or lit on fire or something, it'd be really handy to just flip a switch right on the lift instead of running all the way over to the sub panel. Plus, I can leave the switch off and even padlock it when I'm not around so nobody does anything sketchy. This is just like wiring a normal 120 switch, but of course there are two hots going into it and out of it. The grounds get tied to each other and the switch body with a pigtail, and I'm not going to go into much more detail about electrical stuff because I'm no expert and I don't want to be responsible for someone burning down their house. The last bit of wiring to do is for that safety switch at the top of the lift. This is really simple electrically. The switch just cuts continuity between its two wires, so all we need to do is wire that switch in line with one of the wires coming out of the main power switch. Physically, it's kind of a pain because the box is already packed pretty tightly with all the other wiring and that main contactor. A quick test before we put it back together gives us nothing. The safety switch is working when pressed in, which is the exact opposite of what we want. Turns out we just put the wires on the wrong terminals, which is another easy fix. Okay, let's throw the lift arms on and start using this thing. Both the front and rear arms have 3 stages, which should make the lift pretty versatile. I think some other lifts in this price range have 2-stage front arms. I don't have the experience to know how good or bad that is, but more adjustability definitely seems like a good thing. Like I said, both arms have 3 stages, but the ones meant for the rear of the car are a bit longer. I'm putting these toward the back of the shop because I'll usually be backing in. But as long as the arms can reach the lift points of the car, I should be able to pull in forward occasionally. That bit of flexibility should help us make the most out of the small space. I was about to lay on the floor to put these circlips in the bottom of the pins, but then I realized I have a lift. I may never have to lay on the floor again. A little grease on the screw and lift pads, and I think we're ready. I'm giving the SPG first honors mostly because it's the lightest functioning car I have at the moment. The way we have the lift means most of the time we'll be backing in, and it's a bit awkward, but it's certainly doable. Also, check out how much room there is to get in and out. This car is actually pretty tiny, but it's about the same size as my Volvo, and actually not too much narrower than the Disco. That door access is pretty nice. So if anyone needs me, I'll just be doing this with every car I can find for a while. Honestly, as someone who has never worked in a real shop and definitely never thought I'd have my own lift, this feels like cheating. It's crazy that anyone with $3,000 can just buy this and lift a Land Rover over their head in their own garage. That said, to lift the Disco, we have to use these little adapters, and they don't quite inspire confidence. The SPG was rock solid up here, but with the Disco, I'll use these giant jack stands for a bit of added stability. I know it won't actually fall off, it just moves more than I want it to. So guys, I think we did it. This thing seems to work great, and although I got lots of feedback that this position wasn't ideal, I think it'll work pretty well. We have plenty of room between this post and the wall, and a decent amount of space from the car to the back wall. Nothing will go on this wall, no toolboxes or anything like that, so I think we'll be good. Plus, like I said earlier, I could load a car on backwards if it made more sense for a given project. The shop is obviously not done, but as soon as I build a mezzanine in this back corner here, I'll start moving all my stuff in. I've had most of my projects on hold for the last 6 months, and I'm really ready to stop pretending I'm a contractor and start pretending I'm a car guy again. Thanks for watching.